man, we're not gonna have anything funny for the beginning of this episode.
What do you? Oh, like nothing. No stingers.
We didn't record any of our conversation beforehand, and even if we did, it wasn't really that funny. You got anything funny?
Are we recording?
Maybe.
Hey, look at this kid with poop in his pants. That's is sick. What's up with that? Nasty.
You tried. You certainly tried.
In the first aeon, I was the Great Spirit. In the second aeon, men knew me as the Horned God, Pangenitor, Panphage. In the third aeon, I was the Dark One, the Devil. In the fourth aeon, men knew me not, for I am the Hidden One. In the fifth aeon, I appeared before you as Baphomet, the god before all gods who shall endure to the end of the earth. In this new aeon, I appear to you as CMN.
Imagine that there is a brilliant white light just above.
Is commentary on the magic art.
In the years of the primal force and the dawn of terrestrial birth.
Oh, that was very educational.
Now magic will take place. Don't be fooled by what I just said.
Welcome everyone. I am Social Media Kennedy, and this is Chaos Magic News. We've lost our appeal, but enough about the court case. Joining me, as always, is the People's co-host, Gong Chu Zhongqi.
Gong Chong Shunxi.
Co-host 共同主持
Yeah, that. Oh boy, that was not a good joke. I'm sorry, everyone. I thought that was going to be funnier. You know what's worse is I already know that I've gone through the effort anyway of editing in that joke. Anyway, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. We've gone into the new year. We're gonna get our first episode out. Try to start strong.
Starting strong with just us.
It's back to CMN original for this one. Coco and Local will be back. Yeah, it's fine. We're not shoving them off, but we just wanted to pare this one down and have a bit more of an in-depth discussion because we've got some fun ones. What do we got lined up for this episode?
Well, it was going to be a Banished with Laughter, right? Our segment where we just find kooky, nonsensical occult things and just laugh at them from the perspective of enlightened, intelligent, serious occultist, quote
objectively correct occultists.
Yes, exactly.
The best, objectively most correct occultists to ever walk the face of the earth.
We usually find one, give a bit of a chuckle at it, but something about this one made us stick out a bit more. After that, we'll go into the news as always, and then we're going to round it out with a really something we've wanted to do for a long time, where we're going to do a breakdown and comparison of the various elemental tools that we hear so much about in the modern Western esoteric tradition.
Yeah, the magical weapons, as they were.
We're going to talk about what people like Crowley, people like Carroll, people like Grant Morrison all have to say on these sorts of things. Also look at some of the historical background, people like Levy and its connection to tarot suits and so on. Fun stuff. So to start with, you haven't seen this video.
I haven't?
No, I think I just sent it to you now, didn't I? Or
I think
were
you
you
just
doing a different bit?
No. I'm actually about to fire it up and watch it.
All right, well.
I'm going to hold my phone really close to the microphone while I do it too.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just looking out for you. I got to keep you on your toes.
Great production values on this show.
I got to keep you on your toes with that editing game, you know? All right, so here we go. I'm going to watch it, I'm assuming you're just going to stand there and be a little awkward, twiddle some thumbs. And here we go.
What does it have to do with the Theta Square? So back to Pompeii, where the Rota Square originated. Bob found out that there is a huge immigrant community of Jewish people in Pompeii at that time. Now, Jewish people, even though this is written in Latin, read from right to left, not left to right. So the original square,
like
which
manga.
was the Rota Square, right, this way round. So if you read it backwards for us from right to left, which is Sator, Arepo, Tenor, Opera, Rotus, Bloody hell.
Say
Now,
that
we
10
know
times
that
fast.
Jewish symbology is heavily, and wording is heavily encoded with ancient principles, sort of science, magic. It's why the Masons and the Templars have a lot of Jewish imagery. Is it possible that somebody from the ancient Jewish community moved to Pompeii and created this in the modern Latin, but encoded some secret knowledge about ancient science? Bob theorizes that a repo that nobody's been able to translate for like 2,000 years potentially could be A to O, alpha to omega, omega,
Let go my
rep,
omega.
which means like repeat. So alpha, repeat to omega, eternally. Keep rolling that, which would mean Bob's translation reads, the divine creator from alpha repeatedly to omega comprehends and works with whirlwinds. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what this potential technology, this potential science could do. We're talking cutting ancient stone. We're talking clean energy, changing chemicals into other things, carbon to oxygen, that kind of thing. This is just literally the beginning of a big, deep dive. I'm going to do more videos, but I wanted to tell you this because I found it out yesterday and it's blown my mind. What do you think?
You know what the worst part about that is?
What?
That isn't the original video I saw. That is very similar, but clearly this woman has made more of these. There's probably a bunch of them. You guys might know who this person is. We're not going to say their name because I don't remember it.
Because I can't pronounce it.
Yeah, right.
I can barely pronounce my own name this week.
共同主持
The takeaway I got here is that there was ancient mystical knowledge in the letter square.
Yes.
Somehow that translates to like clean energy or like turning carbon into oxygen. This is very much like, it's not ancient aliens, but it's advanced civilization thing. The idea that there was this great reservoir of knowledge that was just lost somewhere along the way, and that ancient people knew a lot more about how science and magic and all of these weird kooky things than we take for granted. Like, they didn't have running water, but apparently they understood clean energy.
The
not
one I saw talked a bit more about this idea of like a toroidal movement of particles and stuff like that. Just gobbledygook science terms that may mean something in an actual context, but for here, what this person is essentially talking about is that somehow the Seder square, which, listener, if you don't know what a Seder square is, it's a little
it's a palindrome.
Yeah,
it's a square of letters that's like a palindrome.
Every letter has a square, and it's just, a big box of just squares next to each other. And it's Seder, opera, tenet, arepo,
rotus.
It's read the same backwards as forward, and so on and so forth. And somehow that contains a code to explain how the universe is able to create things out of nothing and yada yada. It's just gobbledygook science nonsense. This is not anything that's normally worth talking about for us, right?
No, this is taking something very, by and large, insignificant and then blowing it way out of proportion and making it a lot more esoteric and spooky than it has any right to be.
And it also just puts a standard of like importance in a scientific fashion. It's just sort of this weird play for legitimacy. I feel like 90% of the time, it might not always be, I guess, but most of the time, if I hear someone who's talking to me about something that's generally an occult subject start using things like, oh yeah, well, like quantum physics says, I immediately go like, all right, you're just saying big words to sound photosynthesis. I got it.
Yeah. But this is just, and I understand that it's a very short video, so perhaps this woman wasn't able to. I don't understand the connection of how do you get from square that says some words to the secret knowledge about how to make like cold fusion happen or whatever the hell.
Admittedly, I wish I could find the other specific video. I guess we could start looking for it, but I don't think it's important because it doesn't say anything that's like changed any other thing that we just said here. It's sort of just implying that like, oh yeah, if you read it in this certain way, it means like the world spins, blah, 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 or, God works through whirlwinds and stuff. And look at the whirlwind shape. It's like a yin yang, like kind of nonsense. It's just
Things look like
goofy.
things.
Yeah, things look like things. And because things look like things, that's how cold fusion works. What stuck out to me about it is I was looking through the comments, which you should never, ever do, listener.
Yeah.
Never read comments to anything,
Especially your own stuff.
especially your own stuff. In fact, don't read your own comments on things after you've said them either.
Just slap the keyboard and whatever comes out, and walk away. Listeners, go down to the comments right now and just slap your keyboard.
Anyway, but I was reading through the comments and I saw one. Well, and it wasn't even the comment. It was the response to the comment that made me stick around. A gentleman just said, the second she mentioned cold fusion, I stopped watching. That has to be one of the stupidest ideas I have ever heard.
Okay.
And the response that this person got, gatekeeper spotted. You know it's true, and your attempt to keep these secrets secret fails today. By the way, she never mentioned cold fusion. You did. What she did was speak about transition, not fusion. Something your genetical line failed always to differentiate. In a toroid, you simply don't bring anything together. You split it power, and during the process, you create new. And that is as far as I could get into that comment before I had to check out. There is probably another couple of paragraphs, but
Okay.
the minute I saw that, I was like, I have to show this to people. People have to understand this.
Okay. So the breakdown here is somebody takes a little kooky thing that we don't have a great explanation for, extrapolates a supposed origin that cannot be confirmed in any way, saying that this came from possibly from the ancient Jewish community, and then says that not only is that a possible origin, but they encoded secret knowledge in it that would tell you how to, I'm assuming something about using the weather or something like that to create energy,
like
or
something about
like
like centrifugal movement of particles or some shit.
Oh,
I don't
okay,
remember.
right.
Experimentation in low energy nuclear reactions, essentially cold fusion. Now, I know you're like, wait, what does low energy nuclear reactions have anything to do with this old Roman satyr word game? But trust me, trust the process, it's connected. Bob's research is showing that under the right conditions, elements can go through something called a fractal toroidal moment, which is a really posh word for a vortex or a whirlwind or a rotating rotus.
But
Got
like
it,
I
got
said,
it.
it doesn't mean anything. It's like, yeah, I'm sure these
It's
are
gobbledygook.
physics terms, but this
yeah,
is
it's
this
gobbledygook.
doesn't mean anything.
So then somebody says what most of us are thinking, this is dumb.
This is the
This is
stupidest
stupid.
thing I have ever heard.
And somebody goes to defend it on the grounds that, like, one, the gatekeeping, where it's like, yeah, and then saying you're trying to keep this information from the people. You know that this is true.
You know that the Seder square lets us turn lead into gold.
So that's the rub, is that somebody's like, no, you know this is true, and you're part of it. You're part of the conspiracy to suppress the information. And I know that because she didn't say cold fusion. You did. Gotcha. I got you, Mr. Illuminati's conspiracy. How is the AC in the CIA office that you're posting this
Are
from?
you enjoying your adrenochrome, sir?
And these types of interactions are a dime a dozen, where somebody says this shit's dumb, and then someone's like, no, you're obviously in on it or something.
Well, it's worse than that, actually, because I was thinking about this. And maybe you can say I'm generalizing too much here, but there is a sort of attitude in spooky spaces, right? Where whenever someone comes at you with, this is really dumb and I don't understand it, basically just accuse them of gatekeeping, right?
Oh,
Whenever
yeah,
someone
absolutely.
tells you like, hey, you shouldn't do X, Y, or Z because of this, they'll be like, oh, you're just being a gatekeeper.
And gatekeeping is something that does happen in occult communities, where they want to decide what's like the real deal and what's appropriate and who's allowed to do what and who can piss here and that sort of thing, and you can't sit with us. But that's not the context that this is being used in. This is sort of just going like, you're trying to keep you're gatekeeping in that you don't want people to know the truth. When meanwhile, what they said was, this is stupid. But it does raise the question of approaching, just because you don't fully grasp what somebody is saying or you think it's silly. Is it a good use of your time and energy to go around being a jerk to people and being like, you're a fucking idiot or whatever? Because, you can always just not, you see something stupid, keep scrolling,
Here's what it always comes back to me, especially in the occult. The occult is super duper niche. If you don't believe me, look at the amount of views and the amount of money that successful occultists are making and how many people they're making it off of. Oh, wait.
$3.
Hey, we make more than that. We're doing pretty good.
Hey.
Anyway, but seriously, look at it. There's just, it's a small pond if you want to get involved in it, right? Whether that be from like an influencer sort of side or just a member of the greater occult community, specifically the greater occult online community, because that's what it is. That's where it is at this point. From the standpoint of being part of that, it's a natural response to want to draw the line somewhere. Like when you see the guy talking about, the guy on r/occult going, hey, I did the LPRP and then I had a dream where I got attacked by a shadow man. Did I do something wrong? When you see that, you just go like, you're a moron. There's no hope for you. Like you want to feel that way, but
the My Little Pony servitor of old. There's certain lines of like, this is silly or this is dumb, or people talking about, I want to use magic to travel back in time so that my wife doesn't take the kids,
Right. And you, as a member of that community, you kind of feel like you have to ridicule these type of people, and you have to make an effort into like saying, hey, no, you're not one of us, you can't sit with us, if for no other reason that if you don't, we've seen it before, because there's just not enough people there's not enough people that are seriously doing this to be able to have a general communal consensus on when people are so ridiculous that they should just be shunned out of a community, right? Like it takes
there are some lines of like, if you're, if somebody's doing something violent or awful or abusive to somebody, or they're doing something self-destructive, generally people will be like, no, that's bad. You shouldn't do that.
Right.
When it comes to people with kooky ideas that just don't make a lot of sense, a lot of times it's the notion of like, well, that's, it's their path. You need to let them walk it. It's not you. Who are you to be the one to tell anybody anything? But at the same time, there is the problem of, okay, I'll give an example. Say you have like the little occult circle online somewhere, and everybody's doing their own thing. Everyone's very hands off, just sort of let things roll. And then like a cult gets in there,
Oh, right.
Or even, like a cult or a small knit group of people that all have the same particular ideas, then you just let that fester. And regardless of the fact that this is like, oh, they're doing what this is doing is this is stupid, or this is silly, or this is, possibly bad for you in terms of like your mental or physical well-being, and nobody's willing to check them. Or you let it go unchecked for so long that, hey, great, now your little corner of the internet has become the breeding ground for a cult.
Right.
Or the breeding ground for deranged crazies, or the breeding ground for like neo-Nazis or whatever the fuck,
Those are like the scary worst case sort of sides of it. But the also bad side of that is becoming a place for just the terminally nuts. The people that are just inanely boring, not really doing the work, don't really know what the fuck they're talking about, gobbling up any amount of space or online real estate with stupid fucking inane gibberish.
Yeah. What used to be a nice little corner is full of idiots babbling about nonsense, and anyone who feel like they had anything meaningful to contribute doesn't want to go there.
Right, which breeds the sort of resigned sentiment that I feel like a lot of occult people have. That's almost the two sides of it. It's like you are either the type of person that you decide when facing that situation, like, all right, I'm going to go curate my own little space. And those are usually like the people that are the occult influencer, the content creator types of people like us. We didn't like the majority of occult discourse or the places where you do it. And we're like, we're just going to kind of do our own thing over here. Or the people that are just completely disconnected from it entirely, and they don't engage in this shit like at all. Like, they're the proverbial sitting in a wizard tower doing their magic shit, and they don't go outside, they don't fuck with people.
But then on the contrast too, it's like if you're too rigid, one, you're either an asshole and no one wants to deal with you because it's like, oh, this prick thinks he understands everything and he doesn't want to listen to anybody else's ideas. So like, why are we having this conversation? Or worse yet, it's you and all of your buddies who spend all the time just sitting there agreeing with each other. And then it's like, maybe not the same as like a cult, but you are a dogmatically static and inflexible bunch who, you think you know everything. And then nobody wants to interact with you guys because you're all a bunch of dickheads.
There's an outsider perspective in here too, right? Where we have to wonder, like, should we be concerned about these people from the standpoint of, we don't want normies to think that like online occult culture is silly.
Well, they already do.
That's sort of the thing.
They're already going to think the worst of you. And not even the worst, like, oh, you're because I guess the worst would be they think you're like a dangerous, crazy, satanic panic. But for the most part, it's just goofy. It's very easy to clown on anybody who will say, yeah, I believe magic is real. It's super easy to clown on them.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, maybe videos like this and people like that crazy person are doing us a service because they keep us in the realm of laughably stupid instead of criminally deranged.
Yeah.
People can see the video and go, haha, this lady thinks that the Jewish people had ancient knowledge that could do cold fusion and they wrote it on skulls and square shapes. Isn't that goofy and funny, as opposed to they have the secret Jewish magic, we must eradicate them?
One is definitely preferable to the other.
Definitely.
It's better to think that you're a harmless nut than a dangerous nut. And I guess maybe on the parting thought too, if we're talking about the two poles, if the idea is you don't want to be an ideologically rigid dickhead versus you don't want a bunch of pseudo-philosophical midwits who spend more time with their weird navel gazing and flights of fancy rather than anything that could constitute an actual magical practice. One of those is definitely a more pronounced problem than the other.
Yeah, that's completely.
And we will leave
accurate.
that to your own personal assessment.
Well, there you go. There's your not banished with laughter segment.
I will also say that we it's a nice subject to talk about and we got something good out of it, but we also gave this more thought than anyone should have warranted based on the video and the comment.
Right. Yeah, I'm not going to lie there. I just, something about the gatekeeper.
Gatekeeper
just got me.
Just anytime anyone says anything I disagree with.
The secrets will be secret no longer.
Well, I hope he's right, because cold fusion would be really useful right about now.
So now, because we didn't talk about fusion, we talked about transition. We're going to transition to everyone's favorite segment of the entirety of CMN.
In the history of the universe, of the galaxy, of the planet, of the country, of the room you're in right now, we ask ourselves, what's in the
What is in the news indeed?
Trump save TikTok. Thank you, Mr. Trump.
Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you, Mr. President. You saved the TikTok. I got my circus. Now all I need is some bread. We're going to get cheap eggs and he's bringing back TikTok. We will never, ever revolt ever. We didn't have TikTok for 12 whole hours. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know about you guys, but I went into withdrawals. My hands were shaking. My eyes were darting across the room. I don't use TikTok. So.
Yeah, I saw that people said that it wasn't working and I was like, wow, they did it. Son of a bitch. And then
really did it.
And then a couple hours later, someone in our Discord, I think Sneak, I don't remember who in the Discord though, said,
shout out to Sneak in the Discord.
It was either Sneak or it was Eric, one or the other. Someone in the Discord.
Shout out to Eric in the Discord.
Someone in the Discord
Shout out to someone in the Discord.
God damn it! Now I have to leave this in. Shit. Someone in the Discord said, "Up, it's back," and they said Trump fixed it. And
Yeah,
that
they
was the thing that I
name-dropped
noticed
him.
when
That's
I
the best
no. Well,
part.
that's the thing. When you see the TikTok isn't working, they had at the very bottom that don't worry, we're working with President Trump to hopefully get back to giving you all your TikToks. And I saw that, and I just had a gut feeling. I was like, oh, they already got the deal. That's all I was thinking, man. I felt it in my bones because they wouldn't have said his name. They wouldn't have said President Trump if they weren't.
No.
certain.
This might have been a genius maneuver. They might have name dropped him, and he was like, well, fuck, now I can't be the guy that didn't give them back TikTok. God damn it. They put me on the hot seat.
You know what I think? I think Trump probably got into TikTok because of all of this. And then when he was like, oh, this is great. You can't believe it. It's like, well, it's going to be gone tomorrow. He's like, what? No, I like it.
What?
Now.
No. You see these dances? I love these dances. Look. You see, this guy made a video, and then somebody made a video that's called stitching. It's called stitch. I'm in stitches when I watch it. They stitch the video together. Maybe we should just be thankful that Trump actually seems to get a little bit of technology, like social media tech. Like, you know,
Well, I don't think
he actually gives a
I don't think it was his idea at all.
No, I just meant like, you know, he loves Twitter. He probably likes TikTok.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? From what I can tell, it's much the same as the Gaza situation. I am almost certain that somebody knew that this was going to work out, and it was more of a matter of who gets the credit for it. And for whatever reason, they decided that Donnie Boy, they knew Donnie Boy was going to win, and they were like, well, we need something to keep us going into the new year, because if we make enemies with him, we're going to be fucked. So they're like, let's just make it like, hey, we'll make you look good. We'll make you look like you're the big savior that fixed TikTok, and we'll even thank you on the app. Will you just leave us alone?
So, and the other thing is the whole TikTok ban thing, it never should have gotten this far. The Supreme Court case has established a precedent that the government can just shut down whatever on these very dubious of like, this is a national security threat. So it's almost the worst case scenario where it's like, they've opened the door to get rid of stuff. So now whenever they really feel like it, they can probably just pull the plug on TikTok again, for one.
And they'll pull the plug on anything if it becomes an actual problem.
And now they can't, and now they've got the legal precedent of they can do this whenever for other stuff.
And then they get the positive outlook of,
and then
hey,
also
Trump saved TikTok.
But that's the other thing, is that now there's not going to be nearly as much concern because TikTok still is on there.
Right.
Awful. Just awful. And I don't know what deals happened here, because I really do wonder, because to me, I was really under the impression that TikTok just had too much of a market share, and the tech giants of America really wanted that pie, and they couldn't get their grubby fingers on it, so they used the state.
I think that, I thought the idea behind it was essentially try to force them to have to sell it, and that didn't work. But I guarantee you something that is going to be agreeable for both parties got established. And with our addendum today, we find out that agreeable for both parties means censorship. There have been multiple sources claiming and confirming that various search terms on TikTok are being censored. This also extended to Meta, where we had reports of Democrat and other related terms being put behind a sensitive content filter. Gotta love it.
Well, it's great. The state got another sweeping addition to their powers, and somebody's probably going to make some more money off of this, and the world's going to keep turning. It's great. It's great for everybody except for
anybody.
Yeah. And just like the Gaza,
you already knew where I was going. Just like Gaza.
Which, Gaza ceasefire happens after so much,
the same deal that they had months ago.
But
it's okay.
Just had to make sure
Trump
more people died
for it.
Just had to make sure a couple more people had to die.
Well, Israel has also already said that they're holding on to the right to just start shooting again at any time.
Yeah.
Like, once we're done with the ceasefire, we're just gonna fuck you up anyway. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, this is bad. This isn't. At least there's a ceasefire, but like the irreparable amount of damage that has been done, showing once again that the empire will prop up whoever they want to do any kind of atrocities if it benefits them. it's dark days ahead.
Yeah. Tomorrow is the election of Donald Trump. There's your timestamp.
Inauguration,
What did I say?
election.
Oh, well.
You said transition. You said fusion, and we were talking about transitioning
right
to a Donald Trump presidency. They've also announced sweeping deportation raids that are going to happen. Like, he's going to take his hand off of the Bible, and they're going to say, "All right, open season." So that will be, at least people will be able to watch TikTok while they're hiding in their homes, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and it'll give other people something to distract themselves from when all these horrible things are going to be going on. I still don't see the feasibility of this. I think it's probably going to be a lot of
it'll be a lot of performative
hemming and
raids
hawing.
to make
Yeah.
it look like it's a great thing that's happening, and it won't be nearly as big as they planned, but it's still going to be horrible. So
It's still going to be awful for the people that are caught in the crossfire. Yeah.
right, and the only thing that's going to keep it from being bigger and bigger is just that they won't have enough money for it.
Yeah. In times like this, I really do like to harp on the idea of look where you're at and start there. If you want to help anybody, if you want to try to, even if the idea is like #resist or whatever gobbledygook nonsense, we're saying gobbledygook a lot, but whatever shitty slogan the libs have for this go around, I think it's actually like #cooperate, #embolden,
#collaborator.
Yeah, #collaborator. But whatever. Even if your goal is figuring out how you can try to keep the brakes on the actions of the current political machinery, just keep focused on where you're at and where you can do the most good. And also remember that whether it is TikTok, whether it's social media algorithms, whether it's spectacle of the 24-hour news cycle, remember that your attention is a resource, and it is a resource that is exploited and tapped like every other one. Learn to keep your energy, learn to keep your focus and attention for yourself and for things that will benefit you. That doesn't mean tune things out. That doesn't mean don't care what's going on, but keep things in perspective and remember what you are capable of affecting and what you're not. And remember, much like the opening discussion where we said you can just not respond and walk away. Often the goal is to keep you angry and to keep you outraged so that you don't think
engaged.
properly. Yeah, and keep you engaged.
So your time is spent doing things that are wasting and only profiting one side.
Exactly. That puts a pretty tight bow on the Trump shenanigans. Do we want to talk about the last days of President Joseph R. Biden?
Yeah, let's do the autopsy on this one.
All right. So he fell down some stairs, right?
Cause of death, blunt force concussion from a chair.
Oh,
Right. But Biden has been remarkably quiet. When he does speak, it is exactly what you'd expect, though. A president
An old coot.
Well, yeah,
who lost real bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say it. A president who knows that his term will be remembered for its controversies instead of its progress.
For an absolute abysmal failure to deliver, a failure to stem the tide, a failure on all accounts to do anything truly positive for the American people. But also they're going to give each other medals at the end. He gave Hillary Clinton like the highest civilian award, and he gave a bunch of other people. And it's like, oh man, for all the work we did. And it's like, what? Where? Congratulate. The only thing he didn't do was like put the medal on himself.
You know what it is? It's like freaking it's like seeing an industry like being replaced. Like, this is what it was probably like for the people who made money for like telegraphs when the phone came about. They're like,
man.
you did great work, Jim, but there's just no use for people like us anymore.
There's no place for us here anymore, Joe.
We talked about how he pardoned his son last time, right? And
yeah, he pardoned some other people.
Yeah, he did pardon a lot of fucking criminals that should have rot in jail. But there was one good pardon.
Thankfully, yes. He gave a posthumous pardon to Marcus Garvey.
Ascended Master.
So Bobby Hemmett's probably happy about that. I'm certainly happy about it. What a great, I mean, and it was for mail fraud, right? That's what Marcus Garvey got.
Marcus Garvey got charged with mail
What
fraud.
a weird, it sounds like a joke, doesn't
Well, no,
it?
it's like an Al Capone kind of thing. It's like we couldn't get Marcus on anything that he was doing because he wasn't really doing anything illegal.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about that. I just, whenever I see Marcus Garvey's name come up, I just think Marcus Garvey, Ascended Master.
Well, I mean, Marcus Garvey is a fascinating figure, but
he truly
just don't have a
is,
whole lot to say on him.
Not in this podcast. Maybe for Bobby Hemmett too, Electric Boogaloo, but like
Bobby Hemmett
but
special episode 500.
Oh man. Also, Biden noted saying that the fears of an oligarchy of wealth and power taking over and challenging free speech and American democracy, and like, where the fuck have you been, Joe? Like, what? Man, it must be a problem when it actually got all the way up to the president. Man, he finally found out. Shit, I thought we were keeping it a secret. No one tell Joe, it'll only upset him.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But I thought that headline was very funny in the regards of how out of touch that statement, like that means anything, like that's new information for people.
Well, it's the same as the guy who was criticizing his pardoning of his son, saying that it undermined faith in the justice system.
That's the second headline. It's like, oh yeah, we don't have it. It undermines faith in the criminal justice system that a man can just get away with a crime like that scot-free because of his connections to powerful people. Like,
and it's like, who the fuck are you?
Don't say.
Okay, all right. This is a long way to go for this one, but the people that, like, the crazy people that have that idea of like, oh yeah, they have to like say the things in the media and like they have to give you symbols and let you know what's happening. That way
they had to put the 9/11 thing in the episode of The Simpsons because it's like consenting.
Right. Yeah, that sort of shit.
Yeah.
Like they like, oh yeah, like when you buy a Coca-Cola, it's a 666. But they have to put it on there so but if you can read the symbols and stuff,
they have to hide it in there. Yeah,
right. So that sort of stuff. That's like the closest I get to this because they say shit like that, and I'm like, you're doing that to fuck with us, right? Like, oh man, it's almost like people think that the criminal justice system is corrupt and the people get off by the virtue of their connections to higher levels of power.
Yeah, it's an absolute. But what it is that it's the masquerade. It's the facade of the systems that where was it Zizek that said it, where he was talking about hey, no faith in the institutions. It's going to take a drink. That's going to be one of the CMN t-shirts because we say it so damn much. Right. No faith in institutions. But yeah, it's that thing of like the supposed purpose and function of institutions versus how we all think about them, where everybody still goes and votes. Although this last election showed most people don't. But people go and vote even though they know that the system is fucked and it doesn't function properly. That sort of thing. It's that they're just doing this veneer, this facade, this song and dance that you're supposed to trust the criminal justice system and think that justice gets served and no one is above the law and blah, blah, blah. And then meanwhile, anyone who's actually paying attention. So it's like, they've got to know. My question is, who are they saying this for? Who is benefiting from this going on with this charade? Is it because without the charade, the system can't continue? Is that the idea? Is that because right now, like, no one trusts the government. No one particularly likes the government. We don't always have good solutions. And most of us understand that even if the whole system got dismantled right now, a lot of the same problems would reassert themselves because of how we have decided the world functions. The proletariat will reestablish capital on their own, sort of thing. There's nothing that could be done right now, Even if everybody absolutely hated it, the empire isn't going anywhere. Just because they don't smile at you, it's not like that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So who is this for? Either that or there's probably it's probably a generational thing. It might be a a certain level of comfort and income or whatever sort of thing. But I guess there are people that seem to be under the impression that these systems work. You know?
No, yeah, that's sort of the point. Like, the higher up within the system you get, the more convinced you are of this sort of, at least the veneer of the reality. Like, these are the ways that the world functions. These systems that we've created and agreed to that exist legally. Their existence is sort of reinforced to you, even though you know that their actual function is like obscuring the real things that are causing change in the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess, but I guess more or less, like, there are people that are like, yeah, the system has its flaws and, things that screw up, and, by and large, the system works.
Right. Yeah, it works.
And that maybe that's the lie, that maybe that's the sort of thing they tell themselves. It's like they're absolutely okay with us incarcerating, the most people per capita. They're totally fine with essentially slave labor for prisons and this, that. Like, they're fine with all of that. They just really don't like getting it rubbed in their nose that, like, the rich and powerful walk away. They all know that the rich and powerful exert influence, undue influence to get away with breaking the law in a very brazen way. They just don't like having it shoved in their face. And this is like the most blatant version of it, where it's like this guy did that shit, and then, like, his daddy is the president and just said, nah, it's okay, let my son go.
You're probably right. It's probably just that they have to act like we all know it's fucked up, but we can't say it's fucked up. Otherwise, we're admitting that we've been holding up failed institutions and that we're nothing actually.
But my problem is it's the person. These are sentiments coming from people at the top who should know better.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It's like they have their moral outlook in this situation, for better or worse, is, look, we all know this is bullshit, but we have to act like it is because it's using the idea of, like, these institutions are too important to acknowledge that they are failed and they don't work.
But ultimately, that only further serves to show the plebes at the bottom, the schmucks, us, the working class, whatever, that these people don't have any idea what the hell actually is going on, or they think you're stupid.
Right. It's one or
and
the
they
other.
definitely think you're stupid.
Yeah, they definitely think you're a dummy. You know why that is, though?
Is it because they're also dumb?
No. Well, yes. It's because of the fluoride, damn it.
Oh, man. They were right. It was the fluoride. It was making us dumb.
That total non sequitur is what constitutes a segue on this show. But yeah, Renew calls about fluoride in the water. Latest study shows that it is lowering IQ points.
No, and I swear, and I can't remember the exact studies and stuff like that. I thought that this was not even up for debate. I thought we knew that high amounts of fluoride in the water contributed to lower IQ scores.
I think,
I thought we just knew that.
I think it might have just been that, like, it was like the same thing they do with alcohol and everything else these days, where it's like, oh yeah, way less of it is fucking you up way more than we thought. So maybe it's just that. I don't remember. I don't have the story in front of me because I'll be honest, like, I wasn't particularly concerned about it. I don't care one way or the other. I'm not going to drink the tap water anyway.
Well, RFK is going to fix that. So we're going to replace the fluoride. We're going to put in some worms. It's going to be great.
Oh my God.
Things like this are interesting because it's always that joke about, it's like, man, they always call you a conspiracy theorist, but what were we wrong about? And I'm not saying, but and normally that's coming from somebody who's trying to tell me that, like, Pizzagate was real. They're like, nah, man, they had kids under that pizza place, and the Earth is, there's an ice wall around it, around the flat Earth, that sort of thing. Like, normally they'd be saying some really crazy shit.
Well, and we talked about this in the Discord when that story first got posted. It's like, the conspiracy with fluoride wasn't that you'd make you dumber. It was supposed to be that it made you more, like, pliable and persuadable, which I guess, like, yeah, you could say that dropping a couple IQ points is making you more persuadable and more pliable. But
not necessarily. Dumb people can be very stubborn and prone to doing things that are the opposite of docile and pliable. So that's like I don't think that the fluoride like is making you a mind slave zombie. That was definitely wrong. But I thought I was really under the impression that the IQ score thing was just common knowledge.
Yeah. I don't know.
But maybe I'm just more fringe than I thought I was.
Okay. What else we got?
Do you want to get into some actual Magic news?
Wow, Magic news on
Magic
Chaos
and
Magic
news.
news?
Yeah, it's crazy. We'll start off with the sad one, I guess.
Oh yeah.
As everybody knows, the whole LA area is burning to the ground. It's horrible. It's heartbreaking. This is one of those times where I look where you're at and see what you can do. I'm sure there's massive amounts of charities that are mobilizing to give relief for victims of these fires and stuff. But there's one thing that, well, there's a great many things that cannot be replaced, but one of them would be the Theosophical Society archives that burned to the ground in the fires.
Yep. Hundreds of text.
Absurd amounts of occult text.
Letters and correspondence.
Correspondence. Yeah. And it's always sad, even if you're not like a big theosophy person, you as part of the ongoing Western tradition, you have to give your ups to the Theosophical Society. If you like Carl Jung, you have to give some ups to the Theosophical Society. If you like Crowley, if you like
Mahatma Gandhi.
Yeah. And it is a shame. In Pasadena, right? They said it had over 40,000 titles, and it's destroyed. It's gone. Not replaced, stuff that just isn't replaceable. You're not going to be able to get this stuff back. It's also a number of paintings. Apparently, I'm looking at that right now. It's like, oh man, that sucks too. Like it's just
our artifacts, things just gone.
It's a reminder of the importance of archiving in multiple ways. Digital archives. If they were lucky enough that any of this was digitized, at least we still have that. You know what I mean? Because it's and that's why I think about stuff like the Guntherites holding on to the secret documents. Where it's what happened, like, not that, there's a lot of reasons you might want to take umbrage to that. But one of them too, is it's like, if you're the only ones that have them and then your shit gets fucked up, now it's gone forever, just done, up in smoke, literally. There's already so much tragedy going on, and it just shows you the multifaceted ways on which events like this are horribly destructive, not just from the loss of life, not just the loss of the massive amounts of property and people losing their homes and everything else, but then like stuff like something like this will pop up and it's like, oh fuck.
Yeah. Culture being destroyed.
And
our
another
history being wiped out.
Another kick in the dick of like, man, this was already awful in so many ways. And then it's like insult to injury of like, oh great. And a great reservoir of esoteric knowledge also gone. So that is an absolute tragedy. And like I mentioned, a lot of charities and stuff. I would, if you were going to send money, I don't think anyone in the Theosophical Society is like, yeah, send us some money because I think like that shit's gone. They're probably not gonna.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nothing in there would be able to be reclaimed. So
well, maybe
save
do your own
money.
Research on that one.
Yeah, but I was gonna say maybe save your money for like the people that lost their homes and stuff
and their lives.
But
yeah.
But still do what you want. I'm sure there's probably hopes to rebuild in some fashion. But it's the irreplaceable amounts of knowledge lost there, and that's a shame. That's a real shame.
Yeah.
But on to some fun stuff. Tomb of ancient Egyptian sorcerer surfaces.
Ooh. Let's have him on the show.
Yeah, do you think he'd come on?
Maybe, if you speak the incantation properly. So tell me the story, because I actually saw this headline, but I didn't read it.
Well, hold on. I got to get my copy of the Book of Coming Forth by Day, and maybe he can tell you. No, the tomb of an ancient Egyptian royal medical professional who happens to have also had the role of the magician. I don't like that because it implies that those were two different things. Like, no, they weren't. Back then, those were very, very much joined at the hip sort of things. The discovery of the tomb and the physician's dual roles highlights the reverence ancient Egypt held for magic and medicine. The discovery was made by French-Swiss archaeological team and announced by the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, which revealed that the tomb dates to the Old Kingdom. Old Kingdom of Egypt. And it was found in Saqqara. I'm sure that's not how you say that.
共同主持
It was found to have a fake door with inscriptions and drawings on it, identifying that it belonged to Teti Nabafu. So that was the magician. He was alive during the reign of King Pepi. King Pepi the second. King Pepi. What? I wasn't ready for that.
King Pepi.
It held a whole series of titles related to his high position. He also held the title of Sorcerer of the Goddess Sarkat, a title imbued with mysticism that meant he was a specialist in treating poisonous bites from scorpions and snakes. So that's, again, fascinating. That's the one good thing about a culture that made a really big deal about preserving your bodies and stuff. You get to find all kinds of exciting things like this where it's like, oh, and I was just listening to a lecture by Ronald Hutton talking about the Western magical tradition. It was one of those that sort of reaffirmed that Egypt, we joke and talk about, it's like, oh yeah, everybody just says like, oh, their tradition goes back to Egypt. But in a way, magic really does go back to Egypt, or how we think of magic.
Oh,
yeah,
and
of the terms of ceremonial magic and like the ritual involved and stuff like that. It goes back to Egypt. So to see like, hey, here was one of the, not only was he Egyptian, not only was he a sorcerer, but he was a really fucking important one. He was a bigwig. His hat went all the way up, That's really cool. And I'm still going to giggle every time I see King Pepi.
King Pepi.
King Pepi.
Instantly our patron Egyptian pharaoh.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Let's just hope he's still preserved.
Yeah, we're going to learn about King Pepi real quick.
King Pepi II, not to be confused with his father, King Pepi I.
Pepe Neferkari, pharaoh of the 6th dynasty Old Kingdom. Oh God. Pepi II's reign marked a sharp decline of the Old Kingdom as the power of the nomarchs grew. The power of the pharaoh declined.
Oh, Pepi, no. Pepi, no, bro. Oh man. Okay, we need to pick a different pharaoh.
All right, we'll do that later then. What else do we have?
More ancient history of magic being dug up. Curse tablet found in Roman era grave in France targets enemies by invoking Mars, the god of war, who was, that makes sense. Rome was actually very big on Mars. They were all sons of Mars, Romulus, Remus. But yeah, just another lovely little case of digging up a grave and then being like curse tablets, which
like,
is,
oh no, looks like I've been cursed.
Archaeologists in France discover Roman era grave or man who was buried with cursed tablets, multiple. At least one was written in an extinct language. It was under an 18th century hospital in the town of Orleans, about 75 miles southwest of Paris. More than 60 burials arranged in a single row around a wall. So, wait. Was this like, okay, the cemetery dates back from the end of the 1st century to the beginning of the 3rd. Got it. Okay.
You know what's wild about that?
What?
They said it was written in multiple languages. So that was the essentially like how you see like signs that are in like Spanish and English. Like that for your curse.
Nah, when you hate somebody so much, you got to use multiple languages to make sure they get Now, the question is, do you think somebody like buried that with the corpse? Like that was part of it? Or do you think like he died and they were like, let's throw the curse tablet in there too, just for good measure?
I don't know how common of a practice it was, but I'd imagine that it was probably somebody trying to protect their friend or family member's body, right? That's what you typically do.
Okay, yeah.
What I would want to know really is if they could find out if he was wealthy or not. Like, I don't know how you would be able to figure that out, but you know what I mean?
What I'm seeing here, it seems like this was not like a pauper's grave, but they do mention this was odd because they just sort of had people in rows and there were no cremations or anything. So this might have been where you just buried somebody when they were like, hey, we got to put them somewhere.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, very kind of them to put down the tablets to be like, hey, don't fuck with Buddy's body. And, to the receivers of those curses, hate it for you. Mars is kind of an ass.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought those were two neat headlines of sort of archaeological ancient history news. But Magic, like showing Magic was alive and well in the old world. They did, it was so ingrained that whenever you dig up stuff, you're always going to find, law of averages, you're going to find something like this on a pretty regular basis.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Do we got any more silly ones?
Another SpaceX rocket blew up.
Wah, wah, wah.
People are investigating whether it caused property damage, so that'll be fun later.
Oh. Elon plays video games very well, or does he? I keep trying to figure out when, because we've talked about this a lot, the idea of like there's that critical mass where like the aura of adjuration of
when the aura of admiration finally breaks.
Yeah, when the critical mass comes and there's like everybody, and I feel like to a certain extent Elon he went from being a lot more loved to now sort of reviled by a lot of people, but he's still got he's got so much wealth that he could fuck up every day till the end of time and be fine, because he's still just going to have all of this money and influence. And now he's cozied up to Trump. And it's like, man, so it's like, it is funny to see like people, the opinion that people seem to have of this man and his character has gone absolutely insane. Where it's like they to the point that they thought it was possible that he had made an account to just like sort of suck his own dick on social media. And then it's like, oh yeah, he's got like a really good, I don't remember what fucking video game it is, because video games are for nerds. You need to wave a wand around like a really cool guy. Let me tell you. But the idea that like, oh, he's good at Fortnite or whatever the fuck, is he paying someone to play for him? And it's like, damn. Everybody like, no, Elon shows up with a really cool macaroni sculpture that he made, and he wants you to put it on the fridge, but you don't believe him because like, no, this is good. There's no way you made this.
Look, man, Elon, I know you. Success isn't really what you're about. You're about buying things up that are successful. So you probably bought your video game character that's so good, right?
And then Grimes came out to say like, listen, he was actually good at video games. I watched him play it.
And he totally had sex on me. That happened. And he was good. And I enjoyed it. We have a child.
Yeah.
So that's I don't know. I feel like again, like it's just the sort of disconnect you have when you live in that kind of world, I guess. Because if I had the kind of money that Elon Musk did, I wouldn't give a shit about what anyone thought.
I'd be
Like if you have that sort of money, like you don't care. But he's clearly very much cares what people think of him,
which is just weird, right? Like, dude, why?
Well, I guess it's because for us, like, we're on the bottom rung of society. So you give us ridiculous amounts of money. That's all we want anyway. We want that, and we want to be left alone because our entire lives are spent with our personal time and the things we want to do being made secondary to working for our own survival.
Mm-hmm.
So our idea of getting lots of money is just getting the time to do the things that we care about. Whereas when you have that ridiculous amount of money, I guess none of that matters to you. And it's all about like respect within society.
Yeah. Yeah. But then I guess there's also always the argument of like the dual thing of like, if you keep being goofy and you know that all the derision you get will not hurt you. And like people talk about, oh, he's running Twitter into the ground. He doesn't care. He still has money. He could run 5 Twitters into the ground and he's still going to be the richest man on the goddamn planet.
There's a wrestling promotion called AEW, right? This is a wrestling promotion meant to compete with the WWE, which, is the wrestling promotion that still exists. All the other ones are gone. The respectable industry of wrestling is the WWE. And then there's this weird little thing called AEW that is funded by a guy named Tony Khan. Tony Khan's father is like an obscenely wealthy individual who just gives his son all the money in the world. They own like the Carolina Panthers and then like a football team in the UK, and they own this wrestling promotion. And the point is that like this thing has been like it never made money ever. It just exists so this guy can have a wrestling show. This is a real material corporation. These are people have jobs. People get obscene amounts of money.
Employing people, yeah, that exist as a toy.
Yeah, it's just a toy for a crazy guy with a lot of money. And that's what Twitter is for Elon. It's the same thing. It's just so he can have social media and be like, I'm the guy. I own it. It's mine. He could have been anything. He's got all that kind of money and everything. And he chose, you know what he wanted to be? He wanted to be Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. Yeah. And then meanwhile, like when whenever he talks about any sort of like world changing technological advancement or anything like that, he fails to deliver every time.
Well, success is not his thing. His thing is like buying things that are successful and then making them worse, like Tesla. I guess SpaceX isn't, but
and then doing that thing that we were talking about of like, feeding off of the resource that is your attention and power.
Right.
So there you go. I just wanted to talk about those because they are very absurd headlines that just, you got to say something about them.
Yeah.
Do we got anything else? I've got like one funny headline. Are there any world events? Like, I'm sure there are world events that we're glossing over and missing, Trudeau stepped down, crap like that, but I don't have a whole lot to say on them.
Nah, nothing important.
Do we want to just talk? Do you want one headline that's just sort of like what a kooky world we live in?
Yeah, let's go out on that.
Polish general fired after missing anti-tank mines were found in IKEA.
All right, I'll bite. What are they doing in IKEA? What do you like take them with them and forget?
We thought they were paperweights.
Yeah. Well, it's Poland. Everything's got funny names. You just fit right in.
No. They were found in a warehouse, I believe. The mishap only came to light when the military was called and to be asked when they were going to come get them. Hey, do you want these back or I'm not even General Kaczynski. Major General Artur Kaczynski was dismissed from his post. They declined to say why he was dismissed, but local media linked it to the disappearance. All the way back in June 2024. He allegedly, actually, what probably got him in trouble was not that it happened, but that he covered it up. But they lost over 1,000 tons of explosives in total because they failed to unload part of the train. And the anti-tank mines continued to circulate around the country before they went missing.
Ooh, boy.
Yeah.
And ended up in a warehouse for IKEA.
Just ended up in a warehouse. Now, my question is, like, did somebody think that they were going to, like, flip these? Like, they were going to say, like, I got to store them somewhere. But you know what? Like, I'll just take them down to Murray at the warehouse. He can probably hide them for me.
I don't know,
he owes me a
man.
favor.
Maybe it was just sort of like passing the buck over and over again. Like, well, this was supposed to go with.
This has got to be part of our.
Right.
It's like, no, look, I don't look, dude. I don't even know what these are. It's like, look, they're not. No, they're not on the invoice, dude. I'm not taking. No, come on, man. Look,
take them and we'll ship them out to whoever else if we don't need them.
Fine.
And that about 40 times.
Yeah, they open them up and they just see like like whatever the Polish military is, and they're like, oh shit.
And then they really open it up because they're hoping it's like something fun, like aliens. And there's like, they're these round things. And like, what are they? And then someone looks it up and they're like, that's a
frisbee.
Right.
They're like, man, I play Call of Duty. I know what a landmine looks like. Oh man, I don't know about you, but like if I showed up at work and they were just like, hey, there's a box of landmines over there, I'd be like, all right, I'm going on break.
Like, all right, yeah, my PTO's out for the day. Let's go.
Oh my fucking God.
All right.
That's
a good one. Good call.
No word if the IKEA warehouse manager kept his job, I guess. All right, so rounding out the show, we've got something that we said earlier. We wanted to do this for a long time, but we wanted to really refamiliarize ourselves with some of the material so that we could pull out like actual notes of like, oh, and he said this here and this here. We're going to be talking about the elemental weapons or the magical weapons of the Western occult tradition. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, you're lost, man. You're screwed. We're not explaining shit, are we? But no, for those of you that aren't familiar, I'll say it and you're like, oh yeah, I know. This refers to generally the big four of the tarot, which would be the wand, the cup, the sword, and the pentacle, or the coin or the disc or what's another one?
Coin,
Shields,
disc, shield, sun.
Yeah, that one comes out. No one ever decided what the circle thing was. I'm
Well,
surprised
in a
wheel never
certain
came up.
sense, if you relate it back to the cards themselves, where we get the suits from, they all have sort of variations as well. Again, spade, heart, club, diamond is sort of a variation on it in and of itself, but
That's true.
it
And
doesn't
then
quite
all, like,
translate to occult work as much.
well, actually, I say that, but wand I've seen used as clubs and staffs before too. So
Right, yeah.
and staff, like a wand versus a staff, kind of serves the same purpose. It's very wizardy. But a cup is generally a cup. A sword is well, actually, sword generally has there'll be like sword, but it'll be like a dagger.
Yeah, well, dagger also gets used. In the Golden Dawn, we'll talk about later. They make a distinction there for a reason, but that later gets erased with Crowley. But we're already ahead of ourselves. In general, the use of these 4 specific tools as magical implements to relate to the elements gets formalized in the Golden Dawn. It has its roots before that. It's again related to tarot, where these 4 symbols going back to in the way we always circle back to things, right? These suits that sort of come out of Egypt or in the Middle Eastern area, where we see originally swords, batons, and coins. Notice no cup there.
Oh, there was only the 3. Yeah, interesting.
Eliphas Levi speaks on these 4 in that formation, but it's not quite as explicit as it is later.
It's not, and that was I was going to say is looking through the doctrine of transcendental magic. He actually lays out a couple, like talking about the instruments, where the describing the process of like the wand should be made out of this, and it should have this kind of metal here and this kind of wood and that sort of thing. He talks about the sword in the same way, that sort of thing. But the tools he lays out they're much more like, well, this is the instrument that you will need for these particular types of workings. Like, and there's a lot of talisman building, and sometimes in sort of a tangential way, like a talisman is kind of like the pentacle, but he would talk about like, well, you need like the wand for this. And he even makes the distinction of white magic versus black magic, where he says like in instances of black magic, rather than using the wand, you would use the sword. And rather than using the lamp, which is one that doesn't get talked about nearly as much, but we'll get to that in a second. Instead of using the lamp, you use a particular type of candle, that sort of thing. And then of white magic would be using the wand and the chalice and the lamp. And there's a famous illustration that you can always pull up where it shows like the lamp, the sword, the wand, and then this sort of little sickle, like almost look like the type of thing that you use for cutting herbs. Has a real druidy feel to it. He didn't lay them out as like these are the system. It was more of like, if you're doing these types of operations, these are the tools you need. And this gets more formalized going forward, where someone like Crowley in Liber Abba lays out like these are the implements, and he does a lot more than just the wand, cup, sword, pentacle, but that's a big part of what formalized ceremonial magic going forward, as far as like that. Hey, this is why these big 4 become associated with, fire, water, air, earth. And this is why these big 4 become the bedrock for a lot of rituals. A lot of people that don't even realize that they got it from the Golden Dawn. Wicca famously swaps the elements around there, where the dagger or the sword or the athame or whatever you would call it is fire, while the wand is air.
Right, and that's something I've seen. Stephen Heller from the Gnosticism kind of area gets big into that as well. When he talks on tarot, he talks about it from that stance.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, oddly enough.
That's interesting. I like his talks on alchemy, and because he's a very big Jung guy, but he also goes like Jung is totally a Gnostic.
Right. Yeah.
He's like, nah, this wasn't just psychology, man. He was a spooky woo woo. But that's not a controversial opinion by any stretch. But anyway,
something that Levi says that gets expanded on way later, discussing the tetragrammaton symbol, which you might know is the famous pentacle with the star that's got tetragrammaton Grandma Ton written around it, and it's got the 4 tools.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He equates it with he knows, dares, wills, and keeps silent, provided that he is familiar with the usages of the pentacle, the cup, the wand, and the sword.
Oh yeah, the powers of the Sphinx.
So that's something that gets expanded on later in Crowley specifically, but it is that formulation right there. But that doesn't exactly carry over in all the same facets.
Hey, second addendum, just because I realized I didn't say it while I was editing. Discussing how to conjure the elements does bring up the 4 tools again, but in a way that is maybe a bit unfamiliar. These beings influence the 4 temperaments of man. That is to say, the gnomes affect the melancholy, the salamanders the sanguine, the undines the phlegmatic, and the sylphs the bilious. Their signs are the hieroglyph of the bull for the gnomes, who are commanded by the sword, those of the lion for the salamander, who are commanded by the bifurcated rod or magic trident, those of the eagle for the sylphs, who are commanded by the holy pantacles, finally those of the water carriers for the undines, who are commanded by the cup of libations. So again, we see this formulation there, but it's not quite where we have it later on in the Western tradition.
Later on, when he's discussing the important magical tools we get, the most important magical instruments are the wand, the sword, the lamp, the chalice, the altar, and the tripod. In the operations of transcendental and divine magic, the lamp, wand, and chalice are used. In the works of black magic, the wand is replaced by the sword, and the lamp by the candle of Cardan.
This is the quote I was talking about. Yeah, where he makes the distinction where it's, and this is what I'm talking about, where it's much less. I think now, granted, Crowley would sort of Crowley always kind of castigates anything as like black magic is just when you're doing magic that isn't serving the ultimate absolute true will sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, Levy is making the distinction of like, well, yeah, black magic where you're just being like, you're summoning up infernal forces for bad juju sort of thing. It's like, yeah, that's something that people totally do, and there's a different method of operation which uses different tools, or at least uses the tools in a different way.
Right. And that's a lot more in line with the earlier sort of Solomonic Goetia type magic, which also lots of implements, lots of different things. I think the True Grimoire has a ladle and a lancet and 2 knives and 2 wands and all sorts of different things. It's very like there's lots of tools, but they don't get specified and used and connected in the same way that
they're
we
not
later see the elements and the elemental weapons and the faculties they represent.
Well, even in the same transcendental magic, he mentions one of those things that I think maybe gets taken for granted too, that mentioning like the certain uses of colors and stuff oriented to the particular type of working, where he even says like vengeance related workings, you'd want like red for the martial aspects and stuff like that. What it points to is that when you go further back into Western tradition, and this goes back to the Ronald Hutton lecture that I was talking about earlier too, you see things are the particular tools and instruments and materials are oriented to what the working is. You wouldn't necessarily need a wand for everything. You wouldn't necessarily need the sword for it. You can find workings that don't require these, but they might require something really, strange. It's like, go get a baboon skull with names etched into it or something like that, where it was more about finding the right tool for the job, depending on what you wanted to happen, which is oddly enough what we circle back to in chaos magic approaches, where it's you don't necessarily need this particular schema of tools and setup to do any particular working. It's what are you trying to do? While Crowley having a very particular system that he is explaining to you for particular purposes. Now they have a broad application. You know, if you have the setup that Crowley describes in Liber ABBA, you could do just about anything for whatever, you know, whatever narrow-minded or high-minded purposes you have. But when you look before him, and when you even look before Levy, you find there's much less of a status quo of what these are. But somewhere along the line, particularly because I think because of the prevalence of tarot, I think those 4 particular weapons become very, very like, oh yeah, these are the ones. These are the things you go to.
They become the bare bones items that you can use to do anything, right? The idea is like, if you have these 4, you can do pretty much any kind of magic you want within a certain kind of parameter. Now, in Levy, we do get to see that the elements are associated with each of these items, and these items were meant to engage with and invoke and direct and control these elemental forces. And in the Golden Dawn, they serve much that purpose. As you will note in other rituals, they do have like the sword as separate from the dagger, which is the air element weapon for them. But they have lots of different wands for other parts of rituals and stuff. But there's a specific 4 elemental weapons. Crowley, as he moves on and develops these ideas, takes them from being in that sort of directing elemental forces wheelhouse into no, because the elemental forces are just aspects of your own personal identity, which again, there's that in the Golden Dawn as well. That he expands that into a formulation of, well, you can view almost anything in these terms of these 4 to break them down, much in the same way that he does with Kabbalah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When you see him writing rituals, they don't all involve using these 4 particular items, but there is a sort of correspondence in their use. And he discusses that later. We'll bring up the exact quote, but he's talking about being on the mountains, and, you know, his canteen was his cup and his wand was his axe and that sort of thing.
Yes.
From 8 lectures on yoga, I may go so far as to say that just before I began yoga seriously, I had almost invented a yogic method of practicing magic in the stress of circumstances. I had been accustomed to work with full magical apparatus in an admirably devised temple of my own. Now I had found myself on shipboard, or in some obscure bedroom of Mexico City, or camped beside my horse among the sugar canes in lonely tropical valleys, or couched with my rucksack for a pillow on bare volcanic heights. I had to replace my magical apparatus. I would take the table of my bed, or stones roughly piled, for my altar. My candle or my alpine lantern was my light. My ice axe for the wand, my drinking flask for the chalice, my machete for the sword, and a chapati or a sachet of salt for the pinnacle of art. Habit soon familiarized these rough and ready succedanea.
When Crowley breaks these down, it's because he's trying to use them to give you an overall structure that can be applied to all sorts of things that are what we would consider magic and not magic.
Going into Crowley, like let's start taking a look here. It's the second section of Liber ABBA, you know, part 2, Magick. He has a brief introduction, and he starts breaking these little chapters, and they're all, you know, mostly like 2 or 3 paragraphs at the most, talking about all of the particulars you would need of this setup, where he brings up the circle. And I don't have a whole lot to say on that because it isn't necessarily relevant to this, but he describes the purpose of the circle and what it represents. You know, he affirms with the circle, he affirms his identity with the infinite. That's why it's a circle, because a circle is continuous. He affirms balance in the workings. He affirms the limitations implied by his devotion to the great work, so that he no longer wanders aimlessly in the world. This is getting to the crux of what ceremonial magic is about, at least in this particular system. Every tool, whether it is the wand, whether it is the sword, the cup, the shape of the altar is even described, the necessary qualities that it should have because what it represents. And each piece of this setup is representing a facet or faculty of the magician himself or herself or themselves. That goes into why these things. I know as chaos magic people, we go, it's like, oh, well, does it really need to be made out of this particular type of wood? Would any other piece of wood be good enough? Can I just get can I get my spatula out of the kitchen and use a wand like that? And the answer from a chaos magic perspective is yeah, go for it if it gets you results. But Crowley is ascribing particular measurements and conditions. He even mentions the altar being a certain size according to the stature of the magician. The altar must have a base proportionate to its height, and as that height must be convenient to the magician. The size of his own will depend on his own stature. It is easy to draw a moral lesson from these considerations. We will merely indicate this one, that the scope of any man's work depends upon his own original genius. Even the size of the weapons must be determined by necessary proportion. With the exception of this rule are the lamp which hangs from the roof and the oil whose phial is so small that it will suit any altar. The idea is that you are going to be constructing or at the very least modifying and designing these in a way that are going to be fitting with you as a person. And he makes even the size of these things, because the correspondence of size should make sense of on a practical level of if you have a sword that's looks like Cloud Strife shit, you're not going to be able to use that in a ritual very, very conveniently. But also the idea is that by your own nature, the sword will be a reflection of you as a person, not just your size, but it will be in proportion to all of you, to the whole of you. And that's really the system he lays out. As you said, these are all broken down, that they are symbolic representations of the practitioner. And it's very important to have a good grasp in their construction and how they appear to you, because you are coming to these operations with a totality of yourself, and everything needs to reinforce that. If you have a tool that doesn't actually fit you as a person in some shape or form, then you're not going to achieve what he is trying to get you to achieve.
Right. And there's already a sort of pragmatic approach into what Crowley's talking about as well, because this idea of them being fit for you is one thing. And this idea that of what he presented with the story of, being on the mountain, we play into this idea of the appropriateness for a situation and the tools we have in relation to that, which is interesting given that in two places we get very specific instructions of how we should make one. In fact, I really like his description of the sword in Liber Abba. Very specific design. But then in a sort of deflationary way, he's talking about the intellectual faculty and rationality and so on. And he's telling you, make do with the dagger. He gives this sort of ideal construction of these, almost just to get the idea across to you. It's not so important that you get this and do it exactly this way, at least in these descriptions for these perfect representations.
Well, and I think that part of it too is in what I was getting at in the idea of it should fit with you. He is not just explaining the sort of ideal perfect, this is how you should construct it, but it's the notion of if your sword is supposed to be this perfect, then you have to meet it with the sword as the example, with the sword being the analytical, the intellectual quality, the means by which the magician is able to divide things and cut away things that no longer serve him. You have to meet it with a mental quality that is befitting of the sword. If you read these, he talks a lot about the construction of them, or what they're sword, but he doesn't talk about those so much in the idea of you need a really bitchin' sword or it's not going to work. He talks about you need to build it like this because it is part of you and it needs to be perfected so that you may attain the great work.
Mm-hmm.
If the wand is the will, for you to step into the circle with anything other than the highest, most perfected of wills is to already be defeated. We'll put it that way, I guess. So in the same way that your wand needs to be the ideal wand, because your will needs to be the ideal will if you're going to attempt to do magic, at least to Crowley.
Right. And of course, much like in the Golden Dawn, the way that the aspirant was given these, or rather given the instructions of how to create them, was through a grade system where you went from making the pentacle and then the dagger, then the cup, and then the wand, and then the lamp, which is the mystic fifth one. But the important part here is, do you want to hear Crowley's AA instructions for how to make all of these items? They're all about like 5 to 8 lines. They're very simple.
Give me one.
We'll go with the pentacle then. Take pure wax or a plate of gold, silver gilt, or electricum magicum, which is like made out of like 7 metals or something. The diameter shall be 8 inches and the thickness half an inch. Let the neophyte, by his understanding and ingenium, devise a symbol to represent the universe. Let his zealator approve thereof. Let the neophyte engrave that same upon the plate with his own hand and weapon. Let it, when finished, be consecrated as he has skill to form, and kept wrapped in silk of emerald green. Pretty basic, pretty simple. Doesn't give you anything other than like, this is what you got to put on it. There is one interesting note, I think, here. The wand is called the baculum.
Isn't that the guy from Quantum Leap? That's Latin for Quantum Leap, right?
Yes.
The next jump will be the jump home.
It's Latin for stick or staff, but I think Crowley would very much approve of the fact that a baculum is also the name for a penis bone.
Oh, he knew that. Yeah, he knew what he was doing there. Okay, so I do want to point out, because we've sort of touched on it, the wand being the will, the sword being the analytical mental faculties. The pentacle is sort of representative of the material world that the magician works in, right? It is the element of earth. He describes the idea of trying to encompass the totality of the practitioner's understanding of the world into the pentacle. That's why a lot of times when you see people build like with their own personal like pentacles they made, you'll see like a lot of cosmic sort of, a lot of astrological signs, stuff like that, or things that represent cosmic principles. The rosy cross is a popular one, that sort of thing. So that's the pentacle. And then the cup is one that I think is really interesting, because Crowley describes it as a receptacle. It is a passive thing. It is he says the cup can hardly be described as a weapon. It is round like the pentacle, not straight like the wand and the dagger. Reception, not projection, is its nature. But what he describes the cup as the magician's understanding.
Right. Which is something that gets lost a lot, I think, in contemporary discussions.
And when we get to Morrison, we'll get to it, where the cup gets not described as the receptacle of knowledge. It's not that, but the cup is Binah in Kabbalah, where that's wisdom. That is the womb in which things are gestated. Babylon gets associated with it. It doesn't get taken like that very often anymore, particularly when people are like reading tarot.
Right. Yeah.
Those are the 4 big ones, the wand, cup, pentacle, sword. But he also, he has a chapter on the construction of the altar. He mentions the scourge, the dagger, and the chain as being representative of the sulfur, mercury, salt.
Mm-hmm.
That's one that very rarely gets talked about now, in most cases. He also describes like a crown, robes. He describes oil, which that's like right at the front. He mentions the book, which is the holy record. So Crowley is telling you need to write shit down.
Yeah. It's because in ABBA, Crowley is very much laying out like a full system, something that where everything's got its place, and you won't be able to find an issue in occultism or a ritual or a practice that once you read Liber ABBA, you'll be able to fit in there some sort of way. It may not be the correct way, quote unquote. It may not be how the people that created these things would interpret them. But what Crowley's giving you is a system of syncretism and symbolism that can kind of be a key to unlock all these things. What I think is most interesting about how all of the items that get listed out, the big 4, is what we end up pulling out. And in a sense, it kind of makes sense, because look at the complexity that Crowley's giving you with the altar and the robes and the scourge, dagger, and chain and the oil and all of these things. But what is the easy thing you can pull out of that? Like, well, I can get a wand, I can get a cup, I can get like a little disc that I put cool shit on, and I get a sword.
All I need is my mama's
knife.
coffee table, and I'm in business.
Right. Yeah. It's again, it comes off as the emergency magic preparedness kit.
I want to get into the lamp real quick, because when we go to Carol also mentions the lamp. So Levy brings up the lamp. Carol's going to bring up the lamp in a second when we get to Lieber Null. So Crowley has some things to say about it, but you'll notice the lamp seems to get a lot of importance thrown on it, and the idea that it's one of the things that isn't subject to the will of the magician. And he notes it doesn't sit on the altar, it hangs. And then Levy, puts a big emphasis on the lamp, but no one really talks about a magic lamp. If you say magic lamp, people are like, oh, you summon a genie. Got it. That one doesn't get brought up in occultism a lot at all. And it seems to be implied to be very important. And I'm gonna read this one little spot that kind of says it kind of shows at least what it's supposed to represent, why it would be considered so important. The lamp is the light of the pure soul. It hath no need of fuel. It is the burning bush inconsumable that Moses saw, the image of the Most High. When the eyes of the Magus are fixed upon this lamp, naught else exists. The instruments lie idle on the altar. That light alone burns eternally. The divine will that was the wand is no more, for the path has become one with the goal. The divine understanding that was the cup is no more, for the subject and object of the intelligence are one. The divine reason that was the sword is no more, for the complex has been resolved into the simple. The divine substance that was the pentacle is no more, for the many have become the one. Once again, showing the emphasis on the big four, but showing that the lamp, this particular magic tool, is the one that does away with all of them.
Yeah, and it makes sense because in the elemental tool configuration, the lamp represents spirit.
Right.
Which holds sway over the four elements. Would you like to hear what Liber 412, which is the one I was reading earlier, describes the making of the lamp?
Sure, go ahead.
Let the Dominus Limitus take pure lead, tin, and quicksilver with platinum, and if need be, glass. Let him by his understanding and ingenium devise a magic lamp that shall burn without wick or oil, being fed by the ether. This shall he accomplish secretly and apart, without asking the advice or approval of his Adeptus Minor. Let the Dominus Limitus keep it when consecrated in the secret chamber of art. This then is that which is written. Being furnished with the complete armor and armed, he is similar to the goddess. And again, I am armed, I am armed. That's the very end of it as well. So it's the last step.
You are asked to construct an impossible lamp.
Yes.
Without the help of anybody.
Yep.
I see why no one talks about this. Yeah. And Levy has a much more straightforward, like, hey, this is like an actual lamp that you should build. But this is a very interesting proposition. This is the magical weapon that destroys everything else. Everything else is lost into the light of the one, of the eternal. But also, we're not going to tell you how to build it. That's a doozy as far as ceremonial magic or just magic in general. It's like the emphasis that is placed on this, and at least with how it's presented, it seems something's a little lost in a lot of this, where it's like maybe you should figure out how to make your lamp. Maybe that's a good goal for any of you people out there. I know just about anybody who's done enough magic to really be able to follow along with this. It's like, yeah, I get it. I've got I bought that knife off of Amazon. I went to the cupboard and I got my McDonald's commemorative cup from when Shrek 2 came out. I've got you know what? I got let's see. My 30-day sober chip, and it doesn't count anymore, but I can probably use it.
And hey, what do you know? A raccoon died on my back porch, and I got me a baculum.
I got
just
my
Scott bleaching it in the sun.
I got my Scott baculum, and I am ready. All right, I can do this. Yeah. So if you've got all of those, maybe your next ritual, you should think about the lamp and maybe wonder how you can incorporate it.
Where do we go from here then?
Well, maybe what you're thinking is, well, this is all a lot of highfalutin nonsense, and I'm not going to try to figure out what a cubit is just so I can build this fucking altar. I'm going to get my grandma's coffee table. Mm-hmm. It works just fine. I'm a chaos magician. I just make shit work. Let's turn to Peter Carroll, Liber Null Psychonaut. He talks about the 5 classes of magical weapons. Right off the bat, we're really paring down. He doesn't care what kind of oil you're using. You could probably get that Pam cooking spray and be fine. He doesn't give a shit what your altar is. You don't got to wear a robe. He's saying a sword and a dagger. No, we speed run this motherfucker.
One of them.
One.
Which is
One
funny,
blade.
actually, because there's a quote earlier I'll have to go find where Levy's discussing how their magical balance is important, how all the tools need to be double, 2 wands, 2 swords. So now we're way past that.
Well, I don't have another Burger King cup, so. I said McDonald's the first time. God damn it. Abort the joke. But no. And then I really do think that Carroll is on to something in his understanding classifications. I can't remember if we were recording or not when I said this, but Crowley associates all of these tools as representatives of the faculties, and he describes how your faculties and facets of yourself should be brought in accordance with the great work. And that should be reflected in the process by which you acquire and create all of these tools. I think Carroll looked at these as functionary. He identified what these things represented in terms of what they did or what their intended purpose was in a magical context. And he proposes a different outlook for these things. Moving a little bit rapidly here. The sword and the pentacle are weapons of analysis and synthesis, respectively. Upon pentacles, etheric forms, images, and powers are assembled when the magical will and perception vitalize the imagination. The magician may create hundreds of pentacles in the course of his sorceries, yet there's virtue in having a general purpose weapon of this class, for its power increases with use. That's kind of sort of what I was talking about, the idea of like a talisman is kind of like a pentacle, sorta, and almost to the point that like a pentacle to Carroll is basically a sigil. It's creating an image for etheric forms that are supposed to bring about some kind of construct for invocation sort of purposes. So he says you might create a whole mess of these just depending on what you're doing, but you could probably hone in and find like your general use one. The sword, or more usually the dagger, you see, is a sword, dagger, nah, just one, is the weapon of analysis or scission, or in the most simple sense, destruction. Through the sword, the magical will and perception vitalize the imagination of the undoing of things. The sword is the reservoir of the power which disintegrates etheric influences through which the material plane is affected. Both the sword and the pentacle are etheric weapons through which the higher order powers of will, perception, and imagination execute mental commands on the planes of middle nature. So what he's going right there is like, all right, so the pentacle is about drawing stuff up. The sword or the dagger is the counterpoint to that, where if you're drawing something up with the pentacle, you're tearing it down with the sword. Again, the emphasis on the etherics is something that happens in Liber Null. It's not quite the mainstay it was of chaos magic now, but you could still pare this down and understand it's like the sword is about destruction, tearing things away. It's less emphasis on rationality and mental acuity and more of
to a certain extent, right? Like it's taking, like you said, the faculty aspects of Crowley and turning them into like what
function.
They do. Yeah, into function. Because Crowley would very much say that the faculty of reason is to break things apart, and especially on the analytical sort of side of things where we equate the intellectual understanding and breaking down of things with, the spooky metaphysical side of it that they're trying to talk about with Aether and stuff.
And then he gets to the wand and cup. The wand and cup weapons are used to transmit the power of the life force, or Kia, directly into the etheric. The wand is the weapon of the will, and the cup is that of perception. These words are used to convey the indescribable processes which occur at the interface of consciousness and matter. So that goes back into the sort of etherics thing that not necessarily what all coyotes get down with anymore.
But it is an interesting shift because, will is obviously something that Carroll talks a lot about in Liber Null and Psychonaut as well. And he gets it from Crowley, of course. To make the cup perception is interesting, I think, because the cup is kind of the odd one out here, because every one of the people we're going to here gives us sort of a different drift of what they think the cup is doing.
Different take. And then Carroll also describes the process of perception as being somewhat analogous with will. At least he does in Liber Null and Psychonaut.
Right.
So
right.
that's probably part of the pairing of them, of why he's saying their will and perception. But I suppose you could make the case that perception is somewhat like understanding. It is a receptive quality, like Crowley suggested. It's not projection, it is reception. So
right, yeah,
the taking in and the perceiving of things makes sense. All right. The cup can be regarded as an etheric receptacle of the magical perception of all the weapons. It is the one least likely to resemble the physical object that bears its name, although actual cups of ink or blood are sometimes used. For some, the cup exists as a mirror, a shoe stone, a state of trance, a tarot pack, a mandala, a state of dreaming or feeling that just comes to them. These are the more radical departures, because like I said, Carol sort of looks like a pentacle is like, yeah, it's like it's a power image that can draw up the thing. And then the sword, he's just like, yeah, that's just like a weapon, a sword. And then this with the cup, it's like, yeah, a cup is very rarely going to be a cup. It's going to be something that allows you to take in perceptions, take in impressions of things. So mentioning the tarot, the tarot pack is probably a big one, or a mirror that you gaze into, or a state of dreaming. So those are very radical departure.
Yeah, he's actually it's funny, because we've gone from, hey, you need to get a cup so you can command the water elementals, to the cup represents your understanding of divine knowledge and wisdom, to now that like your cup can be something that's not even an object, like a state of trance. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like we've gone way out of here.
Yep. It gets weirder with or at least as weird with the wand. The wand weapon similarly appears in a profusion of forms as an instrument to assist the projection of the magical will onto the etheric and material planes. It could be a general purpose sigil, an amulet, a ring, an enchanting mantra, or even an act or gesture one performs. As with the pentacle, there is a virtue in having a small, portable, and permanent device of this class, for power accrues with use. As with the cup, the power of the wand is partly to fascinate the surface functions of the mind and channel forces concealed in the depths. Like the sword, the wand is manipulated in such a way to describe vividly to the will and subconscious what is required of them. He doesn't go quite the same level of like, yeah, a wand isn't really a wand, but he mentions like it can be a gesture, it can be a word, it can be a mantra.
That's what I was about to say. Like he says you can make it a gesture. Like, no, that's far out there. That's immediately like, we're talking once again about it going, hey, I wanted to call up the salamanders. You better go get your raccoon baculum. To a hunk of oak that I cut off represents a metaphysical divine will from my own being.
To my wand, where I do that windmill, I do that like little, like that crybaby windmill. I do that in the middle of the ritual, and it projects my will out onto the etherics, and I'm definitely not crying.
Yeah, I Fortnite dance and it makes magic happen.
Yeah. So there you go. So right now it's funny that the first two, the lower of them, are sort of like, yeah, that's kind of what they are. But then the wand and the cup are just totally different. And also I do want to point out that he mentions like a mandala as the cup, and then he mentions like a general purpose sigil as the wand. And it's sort of like, man, it's like you're going to end up with like a lot of sigils and a knife. But he does once again, we're talking about the function. And if the wand is the lever, it's the thing that you use the fulcrum of your will. You find the fulcrum for your will to move something, that sort of thing. It's the wand is what you send out your will with. Then I suppose there is the thought process of like, if the mantra is the thing that gets your conscious mind out of the way to do the spooky, then yeah, it makes sense that you would call that a wand of some kind.
Yeah, I can understand it, but it is funny how we're being abstracted out of this.
Yeah, it's a very like the wand and the cup are notable in that they're like I said, that like that radical sort of departure. And it really is interesting because he does still ascribe a faculty to them or an aspect of the magician's being, but they're in a strange way they're much more base. They're much more just get to the this do the thing, which is that's the chaos magic, that is what we're about. It's results. It's what does the thing. I do wonder, because we talked about this before too, the idea of Liber Null and Psychonaut and a lot of the early chaos magic stuff comes out from people who were familiar with the older Western tradition. And then that turned into a lot of people came into chaos magic and then had to dig back into Crowley and stuff like that afterwards.
Right,
so I wonder how many
people
people
going why would you call this the wand section if you're going to tell me that it's just like a hand movement?
I'm curious how many people read this without that same level of deeper reading and sort of assembled their arsenal, as it were, along those lines, and I like how that worked out for them. Did they go well, yeah, you can maybe even going there and then going back to more formal ceremonial magic? They're like, shit, man, this is weird. I was just used to invoking trance states or something like that. Or I had I did this thing where I pivoted on my back foot and then I rocked forward on my front foot real quick. And that was my zip to make the magic move. And now I have an actual piece of oak that I'm waving around. This is, I don't know.
Again, I think it serves in the same way that Crowley was trying to do, where he's giving you all of these sort of abstracted senses in which these symbols that you get to see presented in things like tarot and other magical traditions, and you can sort of make sense of them in terms of that. But Carol's is sort of like a meta one, because it's oh yeah, you're gonna see rituals where they're use your wand to do this and stuff, but you'll know that what they're really talking about is that when you use a wand for something, it means that you just got to make the magic happen. Which for somebody that's the whole way magic works is by doing things that get your brain to shut off and do magic itself, makes sense, I guess, for Carol. Do you want to read what he has to say on the lamp?
I was about to, but it would be interesting to see taking some of these older rituals and then or making them fit with this scheme that Carol's proposing of when it says do something with the wand, doing the gesture or the mantra or whatever, and figuring out how you can make it work in that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so finally the lamp. So this is again why we brought the emphasis of the lamp. And with Crowley, remember, the lamp was the ultimate thing. That was the thing that dissolved everything into the oneness of the lamp, because it was the highest tool. The lamp weapon is named as such because of the popular analogy of spirit with light. Chaos, the ultimate substrate of existence, and Kia, the personal life force, are equally likely to be felt as an awesome darkness, or as both brilliance and voidness simultaneously. As a device to channel these forces to the mundane consciousness of the magician, there is no limit to the forms the lamp might take. So now we're totally out. It could be anything from an idea of God or the Tao or some primitive looking fetish or symbol. The way the magician is the manifestation of spirit within matter, and his primary technique is gnosis, the focusing of consciousness by psychological means. The magician's lamp should be something which aids his gnosis and receives the forces he generates. The lamp is the weapon of inspiration in the original sense of the word. It inspirits him. So, what's interesting in that regard, if somebody told you to build a lamp that had no wick and used no fuel, and they didn't tell you how to build it either, you might end up with this.
Yeah, definitely.
What is the lamp that burns that's fueled only by the aethers?
Yeah, it's an idea, or
it's an idea of the lamp. It's the
well, to let the cat out of the bag a little bit, just in its relation to the Lama and the AA system of Crowley, making the lamp is the thing you do before you make knowledge and conversation of your holy guardian angel, and you learn your true will and stuff, the big thing. So it sort of makes sense that the completion of the great work can be associated with, or at least the preparation for completion of the great work can be associated with this lamp that paradoxically burns without fuel or wick. And so it makes sense that Carol would write about it in the sense of it can be an idea of God or a fetish or something like that. This sort of abstract connection to your own individual identity as a particular of the universe. I definitely see the lineage here.
It definitely it definitely makes me go like, hey guys, you should figure out your lamp situation. How your lamps? You got any lamps, bro? That moth outside the window just going, bro, you got some lamps in there?
I got a lava lamp.
Yeah, a lava lamp. That would be a good one. It's like it has no wick or fuel, and then you put the lava lamp in front of him. Get out. Oh man, getting kicked out of the OTO because I
Getting
showed
kicked
up
out of the
lava lamp.
AA because I said I did it and I showed him a lava lamp.
Behold, I have brought you a lamp.
Move forward many years.
Many years. Now this is I feel like this is worth noting because this is coming from Grant Morrison, who is a chaos magic person. And this might represent a more of a like a return to the ceremonial with sort of chaos magic sensibilities a little bit. In issue 286, the Magick issue of the now defunct anthology art comic magazine Heavy Metal, Grant Morrison wrote something called Beyond the Word and the Fool. And it's sort of a real small primer for, like, say you didn't know dick about magic, but it was one of those that was worth picking up for me just because I really like Grant Morrison. If anyone has listened to his Omega Institute lecture where he talks about sort of where he's at with magic, it's right around the time that he was writing The Filth, I believe. So it's like post Invisibles. He describes magic in the sense, and like gods in the sense of like the human nervous system having certain preloaded operating systems, kind of, you know, very archetypal sort of thing. I think in the Disinfo lecture, it's also the one where he talks about like invoking Ares, like, you know, invoking Mars is like, you know, that rage and anger. And he's like, if you got a whole room of people doing the same thing that I was doing and somebody dropped acid, you'd probably see horned red bastard cheering everybody on while they're getting riled up. So, and that's kind of what he hints at with this, but he does go into very brief descriptions of the ceremonial implements. He even brings up the altar. He doesn't bring up the lamp, which is kind of a shame. It would have been good to be 3 for 3 there, but he does bring up the altar, and he mentions the altar as the stand-in for the physical universe, you know, the microcosm to the macrocosm. And he uses the thing where he says a big science encyclopedia that he has that he used as an altar. So that's, you know, that's neat. But he brings up the stone, which is, you know, pentacle. And he doesn't say a whole lot of the function here, but he just mentions a little rock that he used to carry around with him, sort of absorbing influences and stuff. And he describes it as representing the philosopher's stone rejected, you know, the stone that was refused. So there's not a whole lot on that one. But then he gets to the cup and he brings up the cup standing for the emotions and the element of water. So this is what we're talking about, where that is the popular conception nowadays of like cups represent like the emotional being, the emotional body, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the intuitive aspects of things, which I guess you could get that more from understanding, but I see it associated a lot with like the unconscious and the emotion and basically things that are not intellect, and then things that are not, well, I mean, I suppose the wands aren't interpreted in the same will capacity in as well, but like there's no consistency with the cup.
Yeah. But then this is what I talk about. It's almost more of the chaos magic reapproaching the ceremonial, where he mentions using different types of cups depending on the working. Where he says a glass of pink champagne makes a great cup of blood when summoning quote female gods, which I don't know.
female
end quote. But you know, I guess. Yeah, that's actually weird now that I think about it. Where it's like it may be brought up like love god or something, or love goddess or something like that, you know. But he said female quote gods, and then he says whiskey in a shot glass might be more appropriate for a Mars ritual. A can of Red Bull can help summon Hermes. So then this is going, like I said, the idea of the right, almost coming back full circle of the idea of using the right thing for the job, but just now you've got 4 tools that you're going to use. but you're going to switch them out to the appropriate type, the appropriate qualities of it for the type of thing you're invoking or calling up, right?
Yeah, you got 4 slots, and you're gonna put the proper loadout in it. Is what you're gonna do.
Yeah. The sword stays particularly consistent throughout, so that's kind of, he just mentions, it represents the intellect. It represents the dissecting analytical function. Then he brings up the wand as being the stand-in for an erect penis, which we went through Crowley and surprisingly didn't talk about. I mean, we talked about the baculum, but that wasn't from the same.
I mean, I'm certain Crowley mentions the phallic qualities of the will multiple times, so it's all right. It's all there.
Yeah. Oh, he does mention that it's like, he mentions an ornate dagger that he got as a gift. He's like, but you can use whatever properly embodies your intent. It could be knitting needles or a cooking knife. He says the sword is your personality condensed down into a ruthless analytical blade, which again, that goes a bit with Crowley of like making, your tools being representative of you. And that in that regard, they have to fit. They have to meet you in a certain way, or you have to meet them. So that's neat. Again, these are very short little blurbs, but I do think that they reveal a certain mentality for how they're approached, which isn't quite the abstractions and reinvention that Carol offers. More of like somebody who went through some of the weird stuff and then tried to come back to it.
Very much so.
I think that about covers it. I don't know of any more particularly out there interpretations or departures of the magical weapons as a whole. Like, I know Wicca has a little bit, but it's mostly the same stuff. Very often, at least with chaos magic people, you'll see folks doing rituals that don't do anything with this concept.
Right, yeah.
These are not necessary facets of magic, but if you are somebody who tries to look in a historical context of where magic has come from, or if you're just familiar with the tarot, you probably have done magic with these things, at least the big 4. You should go get a lamp. But it's interesting to see the juxtaposition and the evolution of these ideas. Carol had very different ideas that didn't quite catch on, I think.
Well, I think the novelty of the elemental weapons, I think more than anything, is just that you can condense them down into just these 4 basic objects, and in a general sense, they're the easiest things in the world to get, right? Like, walk into any room in your house and look around, and you will find 4 objects that can fit this bill. You'll find a cup. You'll find something pointy that's kind of like a knife. You'll find something that's phallic enough to point at something, and you'll find something round.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to look at my desk right now. I got a bottle cap. It's plastic. It's circular. It's clear. It represents my universe. I have a paper clip that I have bent out into a shape. That'll be my wand. Let me see. I have I got an empty water bottle that it will be able to hold all of my divine insights that I receive from my will by using my paperclip. And and I got a screwdriver. There you go. Ready to go. I can now use these 4, and just based off the symbolic interactions of my ability to analyze things, my intentionality and the directedness of my will, my understanding of all of the sort of disconnected bits that I can't fit into the rest of this story with the cup, my material physical world. Bam. I can make something into a representation or a symbol of what I want to accomplish with some sort of spooky magical sense. And that's what really works for people, is you can give them 4 things that are simple, and I can just say, all right, if I have these 4 things, I can make something happen, at least in a allegorical, ritualistic way. And that's why Carol is cool, but when you start trying to apply it and actually use it, people don't get as interested in that. I feel like that's why Morrison went back in the other direction, because he's like, well, if you want, even if you do believe that it's just like, spooky woo woo can be anything you want, chaos magic, there's just a good amount of utility to being like, well, all right, what do I got?
Well, and then it's also it's the idea of if chaos magic is supposed to be results based, then you're going to be striving towards what works. This is a really established set of things that work as far as like these tools used in these sorts of ways produce results that go back to 100, almost 200 years. Yeah. So like I said, hopefully that was enjoyable for you. Maybe it gave you something to think about, like go get a lamp.
Go get a lamp and learn a cool hand gesture.
You learn a secret handshake and get a bitchin' lamp. That's how you know you made it the big time in Magic. So I think it's time for the palate cleanser then, huh?
Yeah, it is. So how goes the work?
Well, I had a dream that was I talked about it in the Discord. Shout out to my dreams in the Discord. a certain historical figure showed up, or there was a shrine dedicated to them, and I was trying to seek some kind of magical initiation from like them, like or their spirit or something like that. So I was like, that seemed really interesting. And I have actually tried to actively avoid learning too much about this person because I'm like trying to get them to tell me something that I can like that I won't know. So then when I go and look it up, it's like, that was right. It's not exactly scientific, but it'd be good enough for me. It would be like, this was legit. I will say one thing that was useful is that I was trying some more of my usual methods of like invocation sort of thing. But what I actually ended up doing that got really notable results was the means of like that active imagination sort of thing where you're trying to revisit a dream, and that and working with the symbols that were presented to me in the dream was far more effective than trying to build up something wholesale. And I guess that might be as simple as like, well, the dream is the important thing, so you should be working with the dream rather than like the name or the image that showed up in the dream. But I've been working a lot, so it's been hard to do a whole lot of anything. What about you?
Well, I actually had I won't call it a crisis or anything like that, but I had this moment where I was just feeling like I hadn't done anything of quality in so long. And it's like I'm doing my daily practice things, but I'm not like super regimented on it right now just because it's like I don't have a firm magical project I'm working on, because in my mind, my big magical project has been this book, and with the way that I'm going about it and the importance of the message I'm trying to present with it, that kind of nonsense. It's felt like that was the important part. And it was funny. I got a co-host to give me a reading just because I was like, you feel like you're on fire right now, that you got the magic and the lightning spraying out of your head. Just give me a reading. And it was like one of those moments you get when you do divination a lot. You get the exact answer you were expecting, except usually that's a very negative one. And this was a very nice one. This was just sort of a like, hey, you're doing the right thing. I'm sorry it's not more exciting.
Things are going as planned.
The fun thing I've done is I've engaged in magical combat with a member of the Discord, so that's been entertaining. We're going to see how that goes at the end of the
Nobody
month.
has any fingers anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm out of mana though. I cast magic missile way too many times.
I cast an M80 into no more finger spell.
Yeah, so that's what I got going on.
With all that said,
this has been Chaos Magic News, which may represent a podcast, but could be something like the flapping of a bird's wings or the movement of a tree in the wind. It's just sort of a conceptual thing, really.
If you would like to figure out how to make an internet that has no connection or power, you could probably figure it out at chaosmagicnews.com, where we'll have more links to the podcast, links to our interview series, the occasional article coming up, and about everything you could want for us, unless what you want is spicy memes. And if you like spicy memes, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, not Twitter, sadly. You can find us on Blue Sky, until I get bored of it. You can find us on all of the TikToks that are still around and all of the TikTok knockoffs that we jumped on because we didn't know that Trump was going to save Christmas. And we'll be posting clips to the show and stuff like that there too. And if you haven't gotten enough from us and you would like to support what we do, for $5 a month, you can go on our Patreon where you will get access to bonus episodes. And what else could you possibly want? You want my kidney? You want my kidney? You know what? I like the cut of your jib. You drive a hard bargain. Just send us a message and I will send my, the left kidney, okay? Not the right kidney. Am I forgetting anything?
Yeah, you are forgetting one thing.
What's that?
If you do decide to not take co-host up on his offer of his own kidney, you can instead have your name read at this point in the episode.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Local. Thank you, Cios93. Thank you, Pope Loki Seder the 23rd LLC. Thank you, Obsflick. Thank you, Coco. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Acolyte 1 of the Ice Magic Meditation Society. Thank you, Curse T. Thank you, Fyodor Krasny. Thank you, Venus Christ. Thank you, Tent Athena. Thank you, Bearded Vegan. Thank you, Tremov. Thank you, Tangy Darling. Thank you, DD Destruction. Thank you, Toziel Obscurus. Thank you, Lavender Ghost. Thank you, Tommy Kelly. Thank you, Equinox Painter. Thank you, Patty D. Thank you, Clodvis. Thank you, Cyridex. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Lehman. And thank you, Marcia.
Well, I just want to say that we love all of you guys, and the support you show us really does mean the most. And it's really astounding, that list. Every time I hear it, I'm a little shocked.
Yeah,
but
it just
also
gets longer every day.
Yeah, and also just if you've listened this far, God, thank you. You're amazing. I'll kiss you on the mouth
if you want it.
If you want it, yeah.
All right. With all of that said,
how do you pronounce my name?
共同主持
all right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.
Bye bye. And there, now you have the opening for the episode.
No, I was gonna do you got something funny to say, and then hey, you got the kid with the poop in his pants.
Hey, look at this kid with poop in his pants. What's up with that? I don't even know where that came from anymore. There was some line of logic for why that joke. You know what? I'm saying that. I'm probably giving myself too much credit. I was probably just do a quasi-Italian voice and then just say something about a kid with poop in his pants, and it's kind of like, you got poop in his pants. What's up with that? What's going on?